Today, we're exploring the states that will drain your finances the most. These are the states with the highest real estate prices, the steepest taxes, the most expensive traffic tickets, costly parking fees, hefty car registration fees, and overall high costs of living. These are the states that, if they can charge you for something, they absolutely will. At some point, it seems like these states forgot they work for the people and instead act like they're running a for-profit company with demanding investors. We created this list by ranking all the states in terms of the most common ways they pull cash from your pockets. After gathering all the data, we figured out which states impact your wallet the most. As we go through the list, I'll share a few interesting stats because going through all of them would be tedious, like a statistics class. We'll also include how much the average single person needs to live comfortably in each state. Living comfortably means your bills are paid, you're not driving a car from the 1980s, you can go on vacation, and you're able to save for retirement. Got it? Great, let's dive in. Number 10, Maryland. Maryland. You'd think with its charming Chesapeake Bay and famous crab cakes, it would be a cozy place to call home. Unfortunately, it's more of a haven for folks who enjoy paying some of the highest taxes around. Maryland's overall tax burden is 9.3%. While it's not the highest in the nation, it's far from the lowest, which sits around 4%. From state income taxes to property taxes, the state just can't seem to resist. Living costs are high too. Housing prices in Baltimore and the DC suburbs will have you scraping the bottom of your bank account just to make it. Parking fees around cities like Annapolis are sky high. It's almost as if they're charging for the privilege to park in a spot where your car could still be towed. Maryland is also infamous for its traffic, with soul-crushing jams around the DC metro area, and Baltimore isn't much better. If you manage to avoid getting hit with an expensive traffic ticket, consider yourself lucky. The median home price in Maryland is around $433,000, but if you're looking in the DC suburbs, you might need to add a few extra zeros to that. In Maryland, taxes are high, but your hopes and dreams? Not so much. To live comfortably here, an average person needs an annual salary of around $97,000. However, if you're close to DC, that number could easily double. Welcome to Maryland. Number 9, Connecticut. Connecticut, the state where the rich get richer and everyone else dreams of keeping up. Connecticut is home to some of the highest property taxes in the country, and they don't shy away from it. Whether you're in a charming colonial home or a modest starter house, the state is ready to take its cut. As of the second quarter of 2024, median home prices in Connecticut are around $436,000. While that might be manageable for some New England states, once you add in sky-high costs for utilities, groceries, and other necessities, it quickly adds up. In cities like New Haven and Hartford, parking costs are high enough to make you consider walking everywhere. And you probably will walk, given that Connecticut's public transit system isn't exactly winning awards. Traffic violation fines are also hefty, so if you find yourself speeding or rushing to get into New York, let's face it, half the state is, be prepared to open your wallet. Overall, Connecticut is perfect for people who enjoy a challenge, especially if that challenge is managing to stay in the black. The average tax burden here is 10.1%, and a single person would need an annual salary of about $105,000 to live comfortably. However, if you're in one of Connecticut's affluent neighborhoods or towns, $105,000 might not get you very far. Number 8, Alaska. Surprised to see Alaska here? Don't be. The remote beauty and cold weather might be free, but everything else? Not so much. Groceries in Alaska cost an arm and a leg since they're often flown in from warmer regions. Housing costs might not be as extreme as some states in the lower 48, but when you factor in high heating bills and other essentials, the expenses add up quickly. The median home price in Alaska is around $377,000, which isn't bad compared to other states. That's largely because Alaska has plenty of small towns and wide open spaces where things are less expensive. However, if you're buying a home near Anchorage, expect to pay double. While Alaska doesn't have a state income tax, don't get too comfortable. Its cost of living is sky high. Residents pay premium prices for gas, utilities, and basic necessities. Parking fees in cities like Anchorage are no joke. Finding a spot that won't cost you a small fortune is a rare victory. And be cautious on the icy roads. Traffic fines are as steep as the mountains. On the bright side, Alaska has the nation's lowest average tax burden at only 4.9%. But it's not a huge draw for people to move there. It's a beautiful state, no doubt, but not everyone is up for the challenges of living there. To live comfortably in Alaska, a single person would need an annual salary of around $106,000.
If you like this video content, please take 5 seconds to click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to support me and not miss any new videos. I always bring you interesting, useful, and creative videos. Join our community to learn.
Number 7. Oregon. Yes, the state where I currently live, and probably will for the rest of my life. You might think Oregon is all about trees, craft beer, and people relaxing and doing quirky things. And that's true, but it also has a wallet-crushing cost of living that could drive anyone mad. Now that I think about it, maybe that's why there are so many quirky folks on the streets. The cost of living here is enough to make anyone go a little crazy. Portland might seem like a quirky dream until you realize you're paying $500,000 for a vintage home that needs constant repairs every time it rains. The median home price sits around $511,000, and the downtown Portland parking fees are enough to make you cry into your overpriced latte. Portland is the priciest spot in Oregon, but other cities like Salem, Eugene, and Ashland aren't far behind when it comes to high costs. And then there are the taxes. Oregon is one of the few states with no sales tax, but don't celebrate just yet. Politicians have been trying to introduce one for years. Thankfully, every time someone makes a good push to add a sales tax, they seem to lose the next election. For now, we're holding strong, but if you're watching this in 2027, we might already have one. As of now, Oregon has no sales tax, but we still have a tax burden of 8.4%, which is above average. They get us on property tax and just about anything else, and if you make a higher income in the Portland area, there's an extra tax to help fund homelessness initiatives. Since we're on the topic, owning a car here is also costly, with traffic violation fees steep enough to rival Mount Hood. So, if you're planning to head out west for some peace and quiet, make sure to bring a full wallet, and maybe a spare one. Oregon's average tax burden is 8.4%. And a single person needs around $114,000 per year to live comfortably here. Naturally, it's more expensive in the cities than in rural areas, but that's the statewide average. Number 6. New Jersey. New Jersey, the Garden State, where everything seems to cost twice as much as it should. The median home price here is around $550,000, which is pretty steep. Many cities in New Jersey are quite rundown, yet the state's average home price still sits above $500,000. The main reason? Proximity to New York City, where real estate is even more expensive. For $550,000 in NYC, you might only get a tiny studio. Then there are the taxes. New Jersey's property taxes are among the highest in the nation, and when you combine those with high sales and income taxes, you'll start to wonder why anyone stays. The average tax burden here is 10.1%, making it one of the highest in the country. To live comfortably in New Jersey, a single person needs an annual income of about $117,000. Number 5. Washington. Washington State is like the more mature sibling of Oregon, but it's just as good at draining your wallet, especially in Seattle. The median home price there is a staggering $800,000. No big deal, right? Just pull that out of your checking account and buy a house. The good news is that the state average is lower, sitting at $615,000. Still kind of high, but at least it's more manageable. The state's high cost of living extends to groceries, utilities, and entertainment. I'm not quite sure where Starbucks fits into that mix, but it definitely plays a role. While Washington doesn't have a state income tax, They make up for it with some of the highest sales taxes around. Don't even think about parking downtown Seattle without shelling out more than you're comfortable with. Registration fees are high, traffic violation fines are steep, and the overall tax burden is almost as bad as Oregon's. Whether you're dodging speed cameras or just trying to survive the 405 freeway, be prepared to fork over some serious cash if you slip up. The tax burden in Washington is around 8.4%, which is on the high side. Typically, higher tax burdens range from 8.5% to about 9.7%. If you want to live comfortably in Washington, you'll likely need an annual income of about $123,000. And if you're in Seattle, better bump that up to around $250,000. Not even joking. Number 4, New York. Here we are in New York, the crown jewel of expensive living. The median home price here is close to $900,000, and that's if you're lucky. In Manhattan, it's almost laughable to consider owning anything for less than $1 million. We're not even talking about a house, just a 2-bedroom apartment for over $1 million. Rent is astronomical, and those tiny, character-filled apartments will have you questioning your life choices. But hey, at least you're in the Big Apple, right? Now, the rest of the state isn't nearly as bad when it comes to housing as New York City. The median home price for the state overall is about $477,000, which I'd say is reasonable, still on the high side, but not terrible compared to the national average of around $370,000. However, the taxes in New York State are unforgiving. When you start adding in city and property taxes, everything stacks up quickly. I was in New York City at the end of August and the beginning of September, spending most of my time in Manhattan. I've never lived there, but I considered it when I was younger. There's no way that city wouldn't drive me crazy. Maybe it's because I was born and raised in Los Angeles, where the layout is more spacious and people aren't right on top of each other. A guy explained it to me perfectly. Living in New York City is like being in a classroom with 100 people, while living in Los Angeles is like being with those same 100 people, but now you're in a gymnasium. That makes a lot of sense. It's getting harder for people to own an apartment or any property in New York City. Most folks are just happy if they can afford a slice of pizza and don't have to eat top ramen every night. Now, let's talk about cars. If you own one in New York City, the cost of having a parking spot and the associated expenses can be astronomical, so most people don't bother. Upstate, the roads can be a nightmare with potholes, and the changing weather means you'll need to do a lot of maintenance on your car, which can get expensive. But that's the price of living in New York State. Personally, I think the Finger Lakes area is one of the most beautiful places in New York despite the high cost of living. Yes, you'll have to endure some rough winters, but the summers and springs there are simply amazing. Here's where New York really gets ugly. The average tax burden is 12%, meaning that 12% of your income goes to the state. If you want to live comfortably in New York, you'll need about $126,000 a year. And if you want to live comfortably in New York City, you better add another zero to that number. Realistically, you're looking at around $250,000 to $300,000 a year. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? But that's the reality of living in New York City.
If you like this video content, please take 5 seconds to click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to support me and not miss any new videos. I always bring you interesting, useful, and creative videos. Join our community to learn.
Number 3, Massachusetts. Coming in at number 3 is Massachusetts, where everything costs more, but at least you get to freeze in style, right? Let's start with housing, particularly in the biggest city, Boston. Real estate in Boston is so expensive that you might start viewing your future mortgage as your own personal nightmare. The median home price in Boston is about $588,000. Not as high as New York, but still up there. Boston is pricey, it gets cold, and it has too many tourists during the spring and summer. Still, if I were ever transferred there for work, I wouldn't be upset. I think it would be a pretty cool city to live in, at least for a while. Now, I've only been to Boston 3 or 4 times in my life, with my longest stay being about a week, so I'm not an expert on living there. I'm sure the locals will have plenty to say in the comments, but that's the vibe I got from the place. It's not that bad, but it does cost a lot to live there. As for taxes, they're definitely present. The state income tax isn't as high as in some other states, but when you add in property tax, sales tax, and fees for the privilege of parking anywhere near a Red Sox game, you're basically handing over your paycheck at least once a year. Traffic tickets in Massachusetts are equally brutal. Don't even think about speeding or running a red light unless you're prepared to pay a fine big enough to fund Tom Brady's retirement. Boston plays a significant role in this, as it's not a very large state, and the Boston metro area occupies a good portion of it. Consequently, about 80% of the people live in that area. The average tax burden in Massachusetts is 8.6%, which isn't terrible. It's on the higher end of expensive states. To live comfortably in Massachusetts, you'll need about $131,000 a year. Number 2. California. Did anyone guess this one would be here? I thought it might be at the bottom of the list, alongside states like Mississippi, Alabama, and West Virginia, where everything is cheap. Housing there is just so affordable. Just kidding, California is a nightmare when it comes to your wallet. It's the land of the rich and famous, and also the land of, why is everything so expensive here? The median home price in the entire state, not just in San Francisco or Los Angeles, is about $850,000. In cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, everything is over $1 million. But hey, at least you have endless sunshine and the chance to see a celebrity, right? California is notorious for its DMV. I lived there for years and have been to the DMV too many times. Besides the aggravation of actually going there, the costs to register your car, pay fines, and get insurance are all ridiculously high. California has some of the highest DMV fees in the country, and visiting the DMV is just an unpleasant experience. I was surprised when I moved to Oregon. When I went to the DMV here, I expected the typical arguments or some attitude, but the staff was very nice, pleasant, and helpful. I returned another time, and a man helped me. He was great. Every time I went to the DMV in California, especially in Southern California, the staff were rude. Dennis Miller put it perfectly. He said everyone who works there seems like they're going through a really bad divorce. The average tax burden in California is 10.4%, which is the third highest in the nation. To live comfortably in California, you'll need about $148,000 a year. All right. Before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to another state, there's a link to a website called Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. It costs you nothing. And give the video a big thumbs up if you like what we're doing here. Now, on to number 1. Number 1. Hawaii. Yes, paradise is expensive, not just for tourists. It's a financial disaster for most residents. Sure, the beaches are beautiful, but have you seen the grocery prices? Since everything has to be imported, a typical grocery run is going to set you back about as much as it costs a couple to get into Disneyland and spend the day, and that's expensive. The median home price in Hawaii hovers around $800,000 for the entire state, not just cities like Honolulu. And Honolulu is crazy expensive. Just like in any state, the closer you get to the water, the more expensive it becomes. There's also no state income tax relief here, and the costs of utilities, transportation, and even parking will make you wonder if the ocean breeze is really worth it. Traffic fines are pretty high here, and overall, it's just terribly expensive. One thing I will mention about real estate, which I should have said earlier, is that I found other reports suggesting the median home price in Hawaii right now is a little over $900,000, around $920,000, but most reports have it around $800,000. Some people actually retire in Hawaii, which is surprising because 90% of retirees are trying to save money. You'd have to do really well with your finances over the years to retire in Hawaii. If not, moving there will drain your coconut fund, and you could say aloha to your savings. The average tax burden in Hawaii is 11.8%, and to live comfortably, you need to make at least $176,000. If you live in a city like Honolulu, that number goes up to around $225,000. Alright, that's today's video. If you enjoyed this one, you'll probably like one of the 2 videos being suggested right now. Everybody have a great day and be nice to each other.